It's warming up, and that means getting outdoors is way easier. Spring is here, so pull that wool off your eyes and listen up. There's a sheep shearing festival on April 27th. Catch demonstrations of sheep shearing, herding dogs, spinning and weaving, historic reenactments, live music, fiber goods, food, and like 100 other things we can't summarize in a list. That's at Gore Place in Waltham. All right, tree enthusiasts, get ready for adventure in Around the World in 80 Trees.
Welcome to Happiness and the City. This is Barbara, and today I'd like to focus our attention on a very important topic, and that is about the topic of the ways, pathways, anything connected with the way. What is the difference between the way and a stationary point? In a stationary point, you just have one point of connection, and it's immovable. Whereas in a way, there is many points, many connections, and it is a very important concept for us to understand, because today there's a lot of demands put on people to do certain things certain ways, but the expectation is that they have to behave as if they were dealing with a point, because the way is connection between one point and another point, and there are diverse kinds of ways: short ways, long ways. There are complicated ways. There are open pathways, secret pathways. So this concept is very important for us to understand if we want to create peace, because the way takes time and space to get from one point to another. It also is a place where all kinds of things are happening, including learning process. There's a lot of difficulty today with demand not to have hate speech. But then there's no way shown how to have speech that is not hateful. In other words, love speech. The word love is not even mentioned by people who demand the end to hate speech. So this is very strange, because how can you have no hate speech if there is no alternative to it, which is love speech? In fact, for many of you of young generation, the word love is usually used in the context of criminalization of certain intimate behaviors. When I was growing up, and that was in the 60s, 70s, the word love was used in diverse contexts of family, friends, church, God. In other words, that word was used a lot in different contexts, and that was the foundation for emotional development. The emotional development of healthy attitudes to each other was through intelligent understanding of diverse kinds of love. And only one of those loves is intimate love. Most other loves are of different types, including what is called natural affection, which is happiness that people and living beings express by being together as living beings. There is natural affection that doggy shows to whoever pets him. There is natural affection of parents connecting with each other and expressing it. It's a very powerful emotion of affection, and God warns in the Bible that whenever natural affection disappears, it means there is no presence of God in those situations. So presence of God creates love, emotions that are very pure. They are connected with expressing of joy, of being alive and connecting with other people who are alive or other beings who are alive. How can we get from this point of attack on so-called hate speech without love speech? There is an alternative, and of course it's logos. Logos is simply speech, and speech can have different powers. And one of the ways in which Jesus Christ of Nazareth, Son of God, calls himself is logos, the word, the language, speech. And because he's God, it is pure love. And when we start reading the Bible, the Old Testament, at the beginning it was the Word, and the Word was God. So the word and speech are powerfully connected with love. So people who demand putting penalties and punishments on the so-called hate speech people are acting in a situation which they want to destroy hate speech without offering any way to move into territory of love speech. Speech that is beautiful, that is logos, Jesus Christ himself. Or those who don't understand Jesus Christ, it's the word of God, word of those who are created by the word. So we have a situation that is extremely destructive about the hate speech. And those people who are doing this should stop fooling themselves that somehow they have the right and authority to destroy the so-called hate speech without having love in their own hearts and in their ways. Because all they do is use their own hate speech to destroy other hate speech. And it's a spiral of death. So I'm offering alternative thinking about this situation away from penalties and punishments to creation of ways to have speech that is not hateful, but still have speech. Because what is happening right now under excuse of getting rid of hate speech, what is being destroyed is language itself, the mouth, the intelligent thinking. It's destruction. It's a way to destroy someone's face or face of groups of people. It's very destructive. Please don't fool yourself thinking that somehow you are creating security for those who are harmed by hate speech. All you do is create more hate speech and create more insecurity and destruction. And one of the ways that this destruction manifests is people become paralyzed with fear and they stop communicating. And this is the reason we have this isolation. Social media actually helps lift it out by connecting people through social media. Without social media, it would be all over, okay? Because of that error in approaching the nature of logos, language, speech. Another important aspect is that the ways that would connect us to language are ways of nature, because we are born with language. That is part of human nature. When someone comes in and says that whatever comes is hate speech and doesn't offer anything else, all they do is actually destroy the natural language and natural speech capacity. And that is what created so much social anxiety. That is what created so much panic in the hearts, fear of people to talk to one another. This is the problem. The problem is the lack of development of ways to show people how to communicate with logos, with speech, and by bringing God into it and power of the nature of speech, there is love and goodness in the speech itself. So the speech itself is good. That's what God created in us, and everything that God creates is good. So speech is good. But maybe certain contents of the speech, certain opinions that are not good. But then people need to learn how to improve their knowledge and their opinion. And this is the way of learning and teaching. Pedagogy. It's a way of guiding someone's speech to better understanding of what is good, what is beautiful, what is noble. Because if government force comes in and wants to shut that speech, they destroy the language, they destroy something good. And also they become tools of enslavement, because they use that authority to silence somebody's natural ability to speak, and that person becomes speechless slave. I don't recommend that. I think that we have to come back to understanding of the nature of speech, history of speech, development of speech, all kinds of ways in which speech can connect with other people, the health that is essential for speech. Speech has to be there in the expression of human mind and human life in order for the body to be healthy. A lot of the contemporary illnesses are caused by that attempt to silence speech, to cut it off, to curse it by calling it hate speech. That's not the way to go. What we need to develop is ways to affirm and assert speech as part of our nature, love that is within speech because it's created by God, then presence of divine speech within our human speech, and then we see that whatever is today called the hate speech is just opinion that somebody disagrees with, but the speech itself, the ability to communicate, is preserved. When the term hate speech came, and I did not grow up with this term, so for me it is the weirdest thing ever. It's very crazy in my ears. It's something that shows the insanity that entered modern societies and political speech, because it associates speech with hate, which means it gives an excuse to cut someone's tongue. It's a form of beheading. We should stop that. We should come back to ways of civilization that have clarity between logos and contents of logos. Cutting speech is like crucifying Jesus Christ himself. Without his resurrection, it only ends up being dead. It will not come back to life. So another situation that was created today because of that, people, instead of being patient with each other in communication and conversations and development of connections, they develop panic in their hearts. Many people are frightened to contact other people, even about very simple opinions. Many people are so terrified that whatever they say will be criminalized, they will just say nothing, even though the opinions are just common or stupid, but that they shouldn't have that fear. There should be clarity between the process of creation of ways to communicate and what is crime. The traditional way of understanding crime doesn't really concern language. It concerns action, like destroying someone's life or taking someone's property or beating somebody up. So this whole approach now to focus the distinction between crime and what is not crime on speech, it's a terrifying thing. This shouldn't be happening. And I'm going to think more about the root of it, but I think that some of the problems may be in the way law developed, modern law developed as a loveless way to create rules and regulations, loveless. So within the loveless law, there's only one concept: hate speech. So maybe one of the ways we should deal with that problem is to return love, affection, emotional health back to governments. All you people in the governments, why don't you check it out? Why do you always have to be raging bulls filled with all those condemnations and attacks and hatred? Why don't you just let love come into your hearts and see what it does to your language and what it would do? And I'm certain about it. It would make you feel good, because it would assert your own humanity, that you are human, and as a human you have language, and language is good. There is a beautiful song by Justin Bieber called Let Me Love You. So this is in many ways the call of speech to all of those lawyers, all of those rule makers, regulators, government people, authority people. Let me love you. It's speech telling them, let me love you. And when I, as speech, love you, you'll feel love in your speech. And when you feel love in your speech, you will have a completely different understanding of communications. And I think that's the way to go. It is a traditional way. That's the way I grew up with. And it was in a situation where there was a lot of godlessness and atheistic structures of the government, but they didn't attack speech itself. They would go after opinions, they would go after certain ideologies, but I never understood this situation from the past and in contemporary times as clearly as when I realized that people are trying to destroy human way of language communication by using that hate speech as an excuse. Look what it is doing to Facebook. Facebook created a very wonderful model of communication, advertisement, and then people throughout the world can use their own will to learn how to communicate with other people. And it's a learning process. And then keep this attack on that free will. Even God gives us free will. The attack came to create enslaved will under guise that some people who post have opinions that are disagreeable with those who attack them. That's not the way to go. Because all it creates is destruction of logos, destruction of speech. Look what it did to Google+. Someone attacked the way certain things were done without any alternative to develop or improve, and the company just closed it. And that's what I'm talking about. This is what is an example of how speech itself is being destroyed. And we have to stop that. This must stop as an activity of justification to improve communications, because in fact it destroys communications, and it destroys language, and it destroys human hearts and ability of people to connect with each other through this sense of security and safety that comes with enjoyment of language, that we are created with language. I went through the 80s in America. I was already here. There were people of diverse points of view, whole spectrums. Somehow we ended up in bars and had some cognac together and laughed together. There was just this understanding that the primacy needs to be given to our personal connections. And then we use personal connections to talk because language is part of our nature. So now to have the situation in which people only look at language in order to destroy it under guise of, quote, hate speech is very strange. I don't know if you realize how strange it is for my generation to think even about other people as their potential hate speech, quote, quote, identities. It's very strange for me. I look at people anyway, heart to heart, and I sense good hearts in people of diverse ideological spectrums. So for me, to have somebody to come and restrain it, it restrains my heart and my freedom. I want to make decisions with whom I communicate. I want to make decisions with whom I meet. I want to make decisions whom I connect to so that we can learn from each other. I don't want some hate-filled government official under guise of control to do it for me. That's not the role of the government. And in closing, I want us to rethink the very concept of ways in which governing powers and authorities should be allowed to function. I think we should not allow governments to enter our bodies and to our lives as if they were together in bed with us. That is something that is not only very sinful in God's eyes, but it's just simply a horrible occupation of someone's personal space. It's not the social media that is doing it. It's those who have power and authority to tell us whether we should be together or not, how we should think, how we should connect, with whom we should connect. That's not government's role. Government's role is to strengthen us, to create infrastructures in which people are well taken care of, to create educational networks, to create militaries and police force, all of those things that help us function within complex societies in peaceful ways. And that also includes financial matters. So the government should strengthen us and give us more freedom. And especially in the United States of America, where we have right to liberty, right to life, and right to pursuit of happiness as laws higher than any other law. In other words, lesser laws cannot undermine those rights, those three major life giving socially rights. Thank you so much for listening to my remarks today, and see you here